I'm no longer receiving audio from the room.
Neither am I. I sent a message and I sent a text, but I can't hear anything.
And Mr. Wismer, I think we can hear you.
There you go. Can you hear now?
Yes.
Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes.
And you, Michael, you can hear?
Yes, I can hear.
You're a little faint.
We
you
can
turn
barely
up?
hear you.
Okay, well, I'll speak up.
Okay.
There you go.
Wonderful.
All right.
And so that is the entire role of the board, the court. We have
All habits, Judge.
Now in session?
we have a quorum, and so we'll proceed. We're honored to have the sheriff with us. Thank you, Sheriff Allen, for your attendance today and participation. And we have the county attorney attending by Zoom. And so we're pleased to have him as well. I don't
Happy
know
to
if
be
I
here.
can, like,
Daniel Roberson.
Daniel Roberson, who is on an item of our agenda, is also on by Zoom. So we're appreciative. We I think can get through relatively quickly the consent agenda, which is approval of our minutes. And I don't think that there's anybody holding for public comment. Is that correct, Jeanette?
There is nobody holding.
And so giving priority to our sheriff's time, we'll certainly yield for his comments. I guess we don't even have to yield. Is there a motion with respect to the minutes?
Some of adopt.
Second.
Vice Chair seconds. It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there, I think there were a couple of little typos that I noticed.
We fixed them.
You fixed them?
Mhm.
Okay. Subject to those fixes, are you all ready to, all in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are then approved. Again, if there's anybody holding for public comment, I'll recognize you at this time. I don't believe that is the case, though. And so certainly should that change during the course of the meeting, we'll take public comment. But otherwise, again, we are thankful to have the sheriff with us, and we welcome his comment.
Just to update everybody what's going on. Just got back from the hospital, so one of our sergeants was supposed to smoke, so and got some burns to his face in a house fire. So just got from there. So as the warm weather goes up, we always know that things become a little bit busier for us. So one thing that the sheriff's office is doing is making sure we're preparing. We're to the point now where we reorganize to the office to where we need it. And then we will expand once we start getting our people power up. So we have a strong recruiting effort going out. And also thanks to the legislature and House Bill 68 also for recruitment and retention. That's huge. And then our unions and negotiations. So hopefully we can see about 12 to 16 months. Hopefully our numbers start to go up and make progress quicker on a short-term Band-Aid here in the next 5 months with laterals. So we'll see where those numbers are here by this time next week. So, but open for questions. I know there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I know that there is an agenda item Vice Chair brings to my attention, and so perhaps you could start by addressing that.
I thought you were going to address that.
Oh,
The easy
really?
stuff, right?
Right. I assume that everyone here has had a chance to read the article that's referenced in the agenda. And I know I discussed it briefly with the sheriff yesterday over the phone. So I don't know, I defer
And
to
this
the chair.
regards item 7B.
Yes, this is,
And this was the matter where the gentleman was going around shooting at political
Well,
figures and.
this was, okay, the background from the article, which is a KRQE article that gives an excerpt of a communication between the deputy and the, I'll call him the defendant. So he stopped him because of some kind of improper registration. Ended up that there was an outstanding warrant for this person, according to the article. And based on that, he was arrested. And then in inventorying the car, the deputies found drugs as well as guns. So in the course of this arrest, I believe from the article, the defendant was taken back to the station, he was processed, whatever, and then he was brought somewhere else. And in the course of that drive, there's an excerpt of a conversation that's reported. And so the Trujillo, the defendant, is quoted as saying, "How do you like the city?" And the deputy and says, "Albuquerque, dude, I really like New Mexico. I just think all of the liberal politics are starting to get in the way of growth here." Trujillo says, "Right." And then Trujillo says, "What do you think about these elections? You think they're rigged?" The deputy says, "Yes." Trujillo says, "All of them, huh?" Deputy says, 100%. Trujillo, "You really think they overthrew Trump?" The deputy says, "I'm not sure, dude." And that's the extent of what's reported. So I believe that raised a concern that came up when we were originally discussing the recruitment vehicle that had symbols on it that could be interpreted, particularly in combination, as dog whistles to recruit right-wing deputies. I think that our board concluded that this was unintentional on the part of the sheriff's office, and this was done, this car, I think the symbols from the car were not even done recently. They were done some years ago, or most of them. So anyway, that's the concern. And because that issue is raised here, where possibly a deputy is expressing a view that the elections were rigged, that concern was reignited in some people.
So I think the question though, I don't think we have enough context about the conversation. It could easily be an investigative tactic. We don't know, or if it's an expression of a private political view, or if it's intentional to bring about the arrest of a perpetrator. And so if you can elaborate on the context of that particular discussion, that would be helpful to us.
Could I just interject one thing? At least from my view, whether or not this deputy believes that, that's his personal right to have that belief or not have that belief. So I'm just putting that out there. That's, he is an employee, and as a citizen, he's entitled to have whatever political beliefs.
What if he'd have answered, "No, I don't think they're rigged"? Would this be a question then?
Probably not.
Well, yeah, I mean.
I think the main difference here is that on January 6th was an attempt to overthrow the US government. Whatever you think, whether you watch Fox News or Newsmax, that's a problem. I don't care. Quite honestly, my barber may be a conspiracy theorist and loves Tucker Carlson and thinks that he's a newscaster instead of an opinion person. Doesn't matter to me. What matters to me, because when I served in the military, I served with people from all over the world who believed, all over the country, that believed in all sorts of different things. But we had a job to do, and we had to be professional.
And David, I
hate to
interrupt.
Yeah, you can believe whatever you want to believe, just as in the course of your everyday job and your duty, be professional.
So we're going on and discussing this without getting any context from the sheriff.
Absolutely. I was waiting for that.
So please, if you can, Sheriff Allen, weigh in and at least give us context. Otherwise, this goes down a road that may lead to nowhere.
And that was one of my concerns too. And like I tell tell a lot of people that it is the context that's important. And it is concerning comments. It's just what the context of the conversation is. So I think a lot of the items also is this a ploy or a tactic for investigative purposes to build rapport? We don't know. We heard the context into where the concern of the recruiting vehicle and right-wing people are trying to recruit them. That answer, I can tell you, no, I've already looked into that. And I've already taken care of that. But the most important thing to me as the sheriff is either if you're trying to build rapport, you need to look at the context of the case in its totality and what you're dealing with. And that is you're making a political comment and answering direct questions as opposed and are pointed at your view, which anybody can have their own view. Anybody can have their own opinion. But that's why we have it in standard operating procedures to, under the professionalism clauses, not to discuss politics, and you'll stay out of this. And so in context, I don't think I even really need to go further on with that. The matter has been dealt with. At the same time, I want to make sure that we got to remember also that this deputy made a huge break in this case. So I look at everything in its entirety, and like I've been teaching for years, is it fair from beginning to end? But in between there, can things be miscued or convoluted? And it can, but at the same time, it also brings up concerns. So it's been addressed with our rank and file. Don't have those discussions, period. We know we have body cams now, and make sure that we're not discussing that, because it also gives people that whether you're a Democrat or Republican or Libertarian or whatever you're with, you're supposed to uphold an oath that means that you are neutral and that you are non-biased. So like I keep telling people, we all have our own implicit bias. And if you believe you don't, I think you're very incorrect. That's something that we need to correct and move forward with your job and state the facts.
I think we're all in agreement on that. You know, I think that, and quite honestly, if I had to go out and put a badge on and strap a gun on my hip every day and see the kind of things that they see every day, I'm sure that I would have a different view of humanity and people than I do now, you know? And like I said, in service to my country in a combat zone, you know, we had people from all over that believed in all sorts of different things, but the mission and the job is what was important. And there was never a political discussion, you know, when it was game time. And so we expect that same level of professionalism from the guys that protect us, guys and gals that protect us, you know? So, I mean, that's, you know, I think that ties it up in a nice bow. And, you know, I mean, the Manny-mobile and all that stuff that with a symbolism, I mean, the Manny-mobile may have worked, you know, but who cares? You know, it's when they're on the clock, everybody needs to be professional.
Anything else
I
for the
just-
sheriff on this?
No, I just wanted to add for everyone's information that this particular deputy also was praised by the sheriff's office. I believe it was last week, because in the course of arresting a couple for drugs, a young child, very young child, was taken from this couple. And I guess children's services were called, but in the time between them being called and arriving, it was this deputy who took it upon himself to entertain and comfort this child. So I think that's just important to know.
I mean, there's no mystery that the law enforcement community skews to the right. It's just that's who's attracted to the profession. And I don't have a problem with that. I'm good with that. But there are folks that are out there that won't even step into a sheriff's office because of the fear. When you are charged and given, like my barber may be, I don't really go to a barber very often, but my barber may be a right-wing member of the pro-Putin Republican Party. It doesn't matter as he cut my hair, right? I think the concern that some people would have is the fact that in law enforcement, you have the ability and you have the right and you have the training to take people's rights away from them. And I think that whenever you combine those two, and we heard in that camp, in the body cam, that raises concern for some people. Me personally, as long as there's professionalism, I trust the sheriff, the current sheriff, to enforce that from the top down. I'm good, you know, and we just got to move forward. I mean, that's part of what we're doing in our function as an advisory board. Is this thing is in the news, and we should talk about it a little bit, you know, and have a discussion and make sure that all views are heard on this thing. But as far as I'm concerned, this is an elite law enforcement agency, and professionalism comes first. And I think that's why it kind of caught some of us off guard when we were hearing that interview in the car, because I was like, whoa, that doesn't sound right. You know? So that's
All right.
So
I would just take issue with the statement that law enforcement skews to the right. I mean, it may be someone's personal experience, but I don't want it to be
statistically proven.
interpreted as
I'll send you some.
position
I'll
of
send you
the board.
statistics. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and that doesn't reflect the board's position.
Right.
You know, obviously.
It's just reality.
Elena?
So just to recap, what I think I heard was that it's not part of your standing operating procedure to kind of have these more personal opinions, to express them during the course of, you know, the professionalism that you do during arrests or on a daily basis. And you revisited that with the rank and file and just reminded them that this is the SOP and to adhere to it. Is that right?
Yes, correct. And at the same time, I just want to make it very clear that also you can always have your own opinion too.
Right.
And the second thing is also, you have to understand the context. This might have gone on in an interview room. And I looked at the context from beginning to end, and we asked the deputy and other people what was going on and what the context was, and it could be possibly building rapport. But was it done correctly? And is that something that you need to understand the context of the arrest that you had and who you're dealing with, that you need to be very careful. So it's just a matter of it coming from a leadership position to make sure that that's the culture we're building on being non-biased. People might take it a different way, whether you're on the left or the right or in the middle, but just be very careful and sensitive to that fact and then make sure you're doing things professionally.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on that?
Oh, sure.
Thank you for addressing that for us, Sheriff. But any other questions or comments that need to go directly to the sheriff? I know, the sheriff, you emailed me the other day about stuff coming directly to you. And I don't know if you want to talk to this body about that. Obviously, you know, leadership, I don't tend to speak to anybody else but you in the department. My vice chair and I believe Mr. Stewart to some degree have contact with others that has been invited. And so I didn't know if that was directed at a particular communication or you were just establishing the chain of communication between us. I'm fine with that. But if you need to address that further, we're here to do that.
Yeah, so establishing it too, so everybody understands where I'm coming from, is I know the past relationship that's gone on with our office and the board. So I want to make sure that any problems as a leader or CEO of any place, business or a sheriff's office, is that we make sure that I know about it. Because I know, because of the history that I've had with the office before and its negative connotation, is things get lost in the mix when it gets up to leadership and you don't know if you have someone that's being nefarious with certain items or a certain topic. I want to make sure that they're all directed towards me, then I can disseminate and delegate. But I also want to make it very clear with my command staff, they're all going to be here. I had Major Anderson in, the next one will be Under Sheriff Williamson, then Hadeno, and then you've already dealt with some of the chiefs. So I want to make sure that we're an open book. We're very transparent. And I think people are learning that in the office right now and what culture that I'm trying to build to make sure we have that trust with the community and also SOARB. I don't have a problem with you reaching out, but as long as you email and CC me so I know. But again, I want to make it very clear that SOARB, and I've said this forever, is great because it's a conduit for the public to have their concerns and questions. And honestly, I don't review lapel cam all the time. So if it wasn't for the story, media, brings transparency also, I would have never known about it, and also from the email. So that's something I looked into right away. Like I said, it did concern me, and anything that we go on down the road with, there's always going to be an open relationship with the sheriff's office. I'm sure there'll be controversial times. This is one of them. It's on a little bit more of a minor level, but we're an open book. But I also want to have so everyone just not hearing from me, here's from my different rank.
Mr. Wismer's hand is
I'm sorry.
up. Mr. Wismer's hand is up.
Oh, Michael Wismer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the sheriff, I mentioned this to Major Anderson last month when she was here, but I wanted you to hear this too. When you came before us at the first meeting, you told us that you were not happy with the way the crime statistics were being made available. And I wanted to publicly note again for the record that they are now publicly accessible on your website. I just checked today and February's data is there. It's particularly important to see the index crimes in almost real time. And I want to thank you on behalf of the citizens for making the crime data available much more realistically than we have previously seen. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wismer.
If I can add to that too.
Sure.
Yeah, so everybody knows. So on the, we're adding to that. It's going to build. But I think as you saw, our stats that are on there in terms of response times of calls, things of that nature, they're there and it's more factual. The City Connect is going to be more raw, so they will be skewed. So everybody knows that's more live data coming in. And like I said, if you're a data person, when you're looking at clean and dirty data, so City Protect will be a little bit off. What we're looking at to contrast is the monthly stats that we're putting at, and then the quarterly stats will really be able to really look at where crime is, where to place people. So it's going to take time. So 2 months is huge, and that's how we already reorganized. So that'll just build up on itself. And I have another idea that is being implemented as we speak, because I just sent an email this morning for some more data to be up so people can see a little bit of the arrests that deputies make. Our deputies are doing great work. I'm telling you right now. There's some things we're correcting, but we have great deputies and they're working hard and doing what they need to, and I'll always support our people. But I want to see what their work and it's reflecting to the public, not just felony and misdemeanor arrest, but also diversion. We also did an operation where we're being proactive in APD's area instead of answering calls. But I had deputies that were actually buying the unhoused some meals. And that doesn't get reflected enough in the media or other people. And they're doing a lot of things with the humanity side of police work and just being a human being that goes by the wayside and is forgotten. So I want to congratulate our deputies for doing that for us. It goes a long way.
I have a question. When reporting the data, do you report it as in like a NIBRS way? So if there's 5 different things that are happening, it's not just the primary arrest or the primary worst crime, it's all of the other ones too?
Yes.
Is that what you're
Yes.
doing?
And that's why I see specifically on the February, it'll say NIBRS in there.
Mhm.
And then we have a caveat, because like I said, with the raw data with City Connect,
Okay,
that way we can verify between dispatch calls and also P1 with our CAD. You'll always have a little bit of dirty data because all the time a call can come in, say as a battery, and it's actually an assault. So is that aggregate being transformed into something else that's just a simple assault as opposed to a battery? That's where offices catch themselves to make sure to clean up that data.
so like in a domestic violence call, oftentimes we see those domestic violence calls make that turn to a disturbed, person, but it doesn't capture the domestic violence per se. They get reduced before they even start through the court process. Do you go with the very first call that's operated, like if it is called in as a domestic violence and the officer says, well, I don't think it's that bad, it doesn't rise to the occasion? Or do you go with the very initial call?
To answer specifically your question, reference to domestic violence, that's easy because usually you're going to have an arrest that is
We would like to
attached to
think
it.
so.
In terms of the arrest changes and you don't have the domestic violence call in itself and it's something else, it's a misdemeanor to happen in your presence or some of that nature, immediately the deputy will tell dispatch, this call is being changed from this to that. From experience with domestic violence calls, they're not changed frequently at all. Usually a domestic violence call comes in and it's there. So it's just a matter of if it's assault on a household member or battery on a household member.
Any other questions or comments for the sheriff?
I had emailed Major Anderson about just if there was any progress, if you had any luck getting better body worn camera service from the current company, or just where that stands. I know that you were trying to get it changed or improved.
So I'll just say, I look at projects when I came in from a project management standpoint, not as a sheriff, honestly. It's a matter of whether the project was handled properly from beginning to end, and also where the communication was lacked, and there was. So we came in, we found 29 to 31 problems immediately, and that's just from speaking with our folks. But in the same turn, utility as our current camera system is who reached out to them to tell them about the issues and the problems. And in that communication line where our deputies telling up the chain of command what the problems were. And we found that that was not the case. It wasn't really happening correctly. Whatever that problem was, I don't know, I wasn't here in the last administration, but that's something you can't have. Utility is trying to bridge the gap. But again, from a project management standpoint, as I'm looking at different companies and putting everything on the table, but I'm making sure to research the problems we had, make sure we research every company to make sure that we go into the contract and have the right equipment. I'm huge on technology. And so people understand where I'm coming from my standpoint, the deputy who is out there every day using this system, what makes their job more efficient, thus bringing you a better service to the customer. And this system at the time, and it still isn't, it's not satisfying my lust for service, honestly, per se. So we're trying to bridge that. So we're looking at 2 or 3 different companies, see what works best for us. But on the outskirts also, what are other offices and agencies around us using? But the biggest thing that people are forgetting is what makes it easier for adjudication for the district attorney's office to be able to have evidence and make sure it's going to courts and also the public defenders, private attorneys. What makes it easier for them, and things that I have researched, and I just asked the district attorneys now the other day when we had a demo from another company, is that the downloading time for a very large case, they have a separate computer for the sheriff's office, so that concerns me, as opposed to any other office or department they work with in this jurisdiction, but it's taking weeks. So that's a huge issue for me. So red flags keep popping up to me, and I'm all about fairness, so I let the company defend themselves or have some type of issue. And utility did come out, they sent the team, and they didn't know about some of the issues and some they did. One of the biggest things that concerned me though was when I hold up this thing, we were 5 updates behind. That's a year and a half behind on updates.
Wow.
So where's the communication loss and what are we obtaining from these new updates, and does it make it efficient for our deputies to use? So at these meetings with every company, I just don't have chain of command. I don't want to just hear from brass all the time. I want to hear from boots on the ground. But again, the people over here, what is our IT department saying? What structurally problems do they have within the county that is not supporting our system? Are we talking to our CAD? Are we talking to our dispatchers, people that install? I think I had 20 or 30 people in a room for another company the other day, and they were amazed because they haven't seen it. I want to hear everything negative. Really don't want to hear everything positive right away, because I think negative you can turn into positive and then find where the real problems are. But for us to be open, so deputies can be open with us to tell us the issues that they're having, so we can address it and come to a solution.
Thank you.
Judge, may I?
Please.
Sheriff, who manages the technology for your offices? Do you have designated IT personnel in the sheriff's office that do it, or do you have a partnership with IT, or do they do it?
It's a partnership, and that's one of the things we're looking at structurally. I don't want to speak for them, but I believe there's maybe 100 IT people within the county.
Right.
They do have people that are, maybe you have 4 or 5 of them. But again, the communication was lost, and directly, here's the problem, here's what I need you to do to fix it. So one of the issues here was the problem with LTE and Wi-Fi. Do we have the structure around the county for it to be able to communicate with the body worn system and also our P1 CAD and doing reports?
Right.
So a lot of people weren't communicating the issues with them, and no one really ever asked IT, hey, we have a system, do you think it'll work? General question. And a lot of them were like, oh, you really asked that question. And then I said, let's go on a bias question. Here's some companies, you've researched it, I know you have. What company would you like, but why? And then why would you not with this other? And that's where we're starting to get a lot of the issues coming up and a lot of solutions coming up. So, and that actually brings out more issues and problems. But that's something that I want to solve, because I want to be very fiscally responsible. If I cancel the contract, bring a new one out, stay with people. How would I explain to you and the taxpayer why we did that? And is it a sustainable program?
Okay. Judge, may I ask one? Sure. Somewhat related, Sheriff. The connectivity that you use to support your technology, are you using Verizon, FirstNet?
So to answer your question, we have iPhone and Droid.
Okay.
So we're not on one company. So so for P1, it's Verizon.
Okay.
And then you have to look at, is the SIM card in the body worn cam, or is the SIM card in the P1 CAD itself? And does it connectivity leave when the deputy leaves the vehicle? Does it switch over to LTE, or does that switch over to Wi-Fi? Do we need a pod? So we're going all over the place, and a lot of people.
Okay.
So to answer your question, no, there's AT&T and Verizon. So now we're also looking structurally through IT, what company would better serve each system that we're looking at, and what does that company actually suggest? And that's where we're starting to come to contractual language and money, to where we have to say, hey, I don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul, but I also told the company, don't give me the Cadillac version and then I get, a Ford Aspire when we buy it. And then we're trying to get up to the Cadillac version. So just be very upfront with me, tell me the price, we'll negotiate, we'll do business and go from there. That way I can be transparent with what we're doing.
Thanks, Sheriff. I appreciate it.
And speaking of price and cost, of course, the legislative session is going to end soon. Do you see I hear you when you say, that this IT problem, the body worn camera problem, is not going to be solved instantly. But is it going to coincide with the process that will yield the resources that you need to solve it? Is the question that I have.
It will. And I'm just not looking at the body worn system. So I'm looking at a system, like I said, about efficiency, but also for adjudication. and everything. So if you're looking at just the body worn system, which is on your body, at the same time, do we have enough cameras that are on dash cams? Because we might have a deputy that gets into an altercation, you're just going to see clothes going back and forth and hearing it. Do we get an overall view and an overall perspective? Specifically when it comes to a deputy involved shooting, everyone, body worn, a camera is very important, but it's not the whole story. And you also have to look at a bunch of different angles. And as you do interviews, you might get something different from the shooter and something completely different from the witness. So I also need to look at closest to the call. GPS systems, does it communicate with our CAD? And also, is it confirming, like we spoke before, with our data that we're doing, all of that stuff to make sure we're confirming so we don't have all that dirty data. And when I talk about adjudication, for the DA's office to get something, be able to download it and be able to get all the information they need. So to give you a specific example, some of the companies that we're looking at, the technology will speak with each other. So even if I didn't turn on my cam, my body worn cam, it will acknowledge that there's a situation going on called a trigger. But we'll also notice that another deputy is there and it will turn it on. It might be ourselves and APD. So when the DAs get it, they're saying, hey, we have 10 deputies and 5 officers, but we don't have 4 deputies' cameras. So what I found out doing the research is because we don't have their camera footage, the case is dismissed. That's a huge problem. That's how we're getting repeat offenders. So can the district attorneys go back in there with technology and say, this camera came up, is it actually recognizable to this certain call, or are they across the street on a different call? The technology that we're looking at is we're going to be able to determine that. That's huge for me. And it makes it easier for what you asked, for personnel doing IPR requests and other things of that nature, to be able to pull the call to get that information out for transparency to the media. Also just downloading something instead of days, it should be hours. It should be able to offload away and trickle as you're on patrol. It should be able to download when you're at a substation. So we're looking at all of that in terms of technology.
Good stuff, Sheriff. Really good stuff, man.
That conversation was way over my head.
It's a lot. So
Consumer cellular.
yes. Yes, ma'am.
Debbie Dodge.
Are you using drones at all for anything?
Stop getting me all pumped up.
What are your drones, huh?
So that's funny you say that. You're like, leave my mind. It's scary. Yes. So Under Sheriff Hadeno is working on it. That's his project. That guy's a rock star. He's rocking it. But the biggest thing holding us up was an FAA license. So we looked at that. A drone program we should be going up here quicker than I thought. I thought it wouldn't go till the end of the summer. We're probably going to be about 4 months ahead of our project time. And the reason I'm looking at, just not for the drag racing, but all the shooting going out in the West Mesa in open space areas. We're having a lot of issues already of rounds going through homes. And we're also having a lot of issues in the Bosque with the house starting to light fires. That worries me with summer months coming up. And at the same time, we know, crime stats are not going down. I'll just be very upfront with that. When it gets warmer, the crime stats will go up.
Yep.
Right.
That's just how it is. So how do we battle that and then make sure, can we forecast and sustain for the crime to go down and make sure we have sustainable programs and addressing it correctly? So I think the drones will help. And also with our people power issue, that will take a lot of things out of the equation. We had a SWAT call last week to where a drone would probably cut the call time down and been a lot safer for our deputies. So like I said, I'm really into technology and our drone program will be up, and I think it'll be quite surprised. I don't want to give away all the eye candy. So
Yeah, we're using it a lot I work for an engineering firm. And so now they use drones a lot to observe, what's going on in the construction of highways.
and also for investigations. If you look at something on Paseo del Norte, I think that would help our traffic unit cut down the whole traffic being blocked for hours, cut that down significantly. So I'm looking at it from every angle that I can on why a program would be beneficial. Once we get it up, I think you'll see a noticeable difference.
Right on.
Good.
Other questions, comments for the sheriff?
You had mentioned a little bit about the legislature. What are your thoughts on how we're going to do and what's passed, what's still pending in terms of adding some more boots, which is a real issue, right? More boots on the street. All these other things that we talked about are tertiary. But, the fact is, you're going to fight crime with more deputies. And what are your thoughts on that?
The thoughts, I think mix this in between our unions negotiations for raises, that our number one priority is our deputies' raises. We're not competing with Albuquerque Police Department, Santa Fe, New Mexico State Police, Rio Rancho, even Santa Fe County. People that come into law enforcement that are younger, as opposed to myself and Mr. Stewart, who have been in law enforcement for a while, excuse me. They don't look at when you retire, what's going into your retirement. They just look at the big number right away. But then people don't even look at to what percentage you're looking at and putting into retirement. They just look at the take home pay. So the number's important, but I think the legislature with House Bill 68 for retention does help us. It helps us recruit. That's how we get those incentives out there. And then negotiations with the county is getting to at least parity with other neighboring offices. I really, money's important, but it's not everything. I think culture's huge. And I really have confidence in the sheriff's office to where our culture will beat out other people. And you can have work and you can have fun working here. Did the budget summary yesterday for Bernalillo County, and I say it every morning. I tell the county manager, great day to be working in Bernalillo County. And it is. It's a great place to work for. So we just need to make sure that our people are, I don't want to say pay correctly, but at par with other people that compete. I think that is important. As far as other legislature stuff as you were asking for, crime bills, capital outlay money. I'm also looking for shot spotter technology, training for VR that I did capital outlay for through Apex Officer. If anyone wants to Google that, I brought it at CNM. That was huge for me, for our academy staff, for the people we're bringing in, to make sure that we're training appropriately. I know we need numbers, but I will never, ever lessen how to get in here standards. Right. I'd rather have quality over numbers, but I think it's very positive. Crime bills, you never know. We have it the last week, and it's going to be some long nights. The biggest one I'm looking at, though, and you saw what I brought the new year, is organized retail crime. That is huge. That I'm telling people that auto theft is a gateway to violent crime. And I mean, I can't speak about certain cases, but I think you'll be very surprised here in the next month or two when we come out with information of what we're finding here. And it's scary. It is, but I think we're taking a lot of bad people off the streets. Now I need those people to, whether it's, staying in jail, whether it's diversion, whether it's rehabilitation, I don't know. I just know that they can't keep coming out here and being a repeat violent offender in Bernalillo County, because it's hurting all of us. So I'm on the positive side. Legislature's working hard. There's always fights and committees. Just to give them my advice, whether the bill passes or not, I think relationships are huge.
Great. Unless there's anything else, Sheriff, you again been very generous with your time. We appreciate it. You're certainly welcome to stay as we continue our deliberations, but you are a busy man, and if you need to go with our blessing.
I gotta go to another function, but great to see you all. And then the next one I'll have Under Sheriff Williamson come in. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
have a good day.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'll leave also. I'm interested in finding out what the sheriff is. And by the way, just introduce myself officially to everyone. Pardon me. My name is Armani Mansour, and I'm the administrator in the risk department now. So recently employed here, and I'm trying to gather as much information as I possibly can to make sure that I help support the county and keep it out of trouble.
Well, thank you. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So back to the order of the day, unless somebody has something more appealing. Let's start. Start with number 6, old. We have an old business. I think Robert's rules is changing that due to my age, probably.
Some of this stuff the sheriff's covered, so I don't know if you guys want to
Yeah.
go through and just eliminate what has been covered and just what hasn't.
I think we should just have a continuing agenda item that is put on every agenda as a report from subcommittees on any progress or developments they want to report. And I gave these to Danette because these are the subcommittees I remember. But if anyone has a subcommittee that's not listed on here, or someone who's not on any of the subcommittees or not listed but should be or wants to be on them, we can certainly add that.
So just for my clarification, because I can put subcommittees, you know, and then that will just always be standing. on the
Subcommittee
agenda.
reports is fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do
And it
we,
doesn't have to be every subcommittee. You guys will just decide each meeting who's up or.
so just a quick question for the group. Do we want to put a meeting around these new units, enforcement units, and have someone come and speak to us about that? Is that something, a meeting topic in the future? That we
I
could
think
just
so.
cover that? Okay, all right. So just tell me when you want to do that. I'll organize that.
And it seems to me.
Since my name's on there, I was like, hello, okay. Well, I better ask the sheriff to talk to us about the legislature.
Right? Yeah, and so it seems to me, you know, he's getting a little more settled.
Yeah.
And so maybe there'll be more to present by those people who.
Yeah, I think you sent an article that talked about the
Right.
property crime unit and the auto theft unit.
Yeah.
And certainly, once he decides he's gonna head that, we could invite them over to give us a game plan, what they want to do, you know, for the public.
I think some of these committee or subcommittee assignments were done when Joseph wasn't here or you were on Zoom. And so I didn't know if you have any interest or, you know, you want to propose another.
If he wasn't here, how is it that we didn't include him on every
I know.
subcommittee?
Yeah, you should have given him everything. Yeah.
Yeah, you're on all this committee.
I was like, oh, yeah, you're
So
good
if
at
you
that
want to look it
one.
over. And
Yeah,
and
if you
just
if you
let
have
us
some
know.
particular interest, you know, we certainly want to accommodate that. But otherwise, is there discussion that we need to have as a report from subcommittees?
I had just started to take a look at the different places that we could have the meetings to get
Right.
feedback from communities and stuff like that. And so I ventured into the community center issues of trying to, how you would go about signing up. And it's a process because you have to be a member before you can get any paperwork, you know, so to find out where the meetings are, what the dates are, all of that. But I finally was able to speak to Tanya Vigil, who is kind of in control of some of those issues around community centers and things. And there really is not a way to take a look at all of the community centers all at the same time to see what might have availability. You have to do it individually for every single community center that you might be interested in. What I did was take a look at the outlying centers, like the Westgate Heights, places that I thought, you know, certainly have underserved communities that we might want to allow to have a voice during that period of time. So Westgate Heights, the Don Newton Center, which is kind of north west. So it, you know, is in that one area. The Westgate Heights and Bareilles were some of them. I also looked into I contacted both Sandia and Isleta, the community-oriented policing, the law enforcement agencies, to see if they would have any interest. Right now, both of those agencies said, no, they don't feel, and I kind of knew that that's what was going to be the answer, but I wanted to check. And a lot of it is, well, we don't have a lot of interaction with the BCSO, even though I know BCSO runs through that Sandia Road going to the casino, but they said not right now. So I'm fine with that, but at least, you know, we asked to see if that was something that they would be interested in. I think if we decide we want to do it at, let's say, Westgate Heights, and then at the Don Newton Center, which are at the two edges where sheriff's office might be more prevalent than like within the city, for instance, what I can do is give some dates to everybody. They operate in between their normal times and about half an hour before they close during the week. And then on Saturdays, it's the same thing. We compete with a lot of different things for those agencies, like out crafts fairs and things like that. But I can get a schedule that we can decide when we would like to do something like that, but we really need to try to schedule it 2 to 3 months ahead of time so that we can advertise it. Yes.
So those sound like those are city community centers, so we need to work within the county, it's a little bit easier because you have county people here who can probably schedule for you a little bit easier than working with the city, being that you are a board of the county. So
Right.
I will look around at the county ones. I will give you a list of what there is and we can kind of look at where the parameters are of them. Paradise Hills, of course, is way up
Right.
there. You have Central Valley and then you have East Mountains. But we can look at definitely the county ones because I think the county ones are a lot easier to schedule with just because you're, within the county. And like I
Right.
said, you have people in the county that are here, so we can
Well,
kind of
maybe
go.
you and I can, combine as like wherever we don't have, where
I
we
can
might have
work
a
with you.
space, then we can do that. And maybe have 2 or 3 scheduled for the next following year that we could do to either have our meeting or have a special meeting. And that's the other thing I wanted to find out. If we wanted to have our meeting at the same time, or if we want to have just a special meeting saying we're here to listen, and if there's any issues, and here are some of the issues that you may want to speak about. But I wanted to get feedback on that.
I think that's a really good idea. And not just being out there in the county, but also maybe inviting people, whether it's, when we talk about property crime, small business owners
Right.
that may be affected by that. People from the, African American Chamber of Commerce
Right.
are very active and they show up. People from the, Albuquerque Chamber, the Hispano Chamber,
Right.
when we talk about property crime, I think that, because that really does affect small business, in the outward, type of way. So, and they're very opinionated on that. And maybe I know we put this thing out there, we say, this is where we're gonna meet, this is what we're gonna do, but maybe inviting, members of the business community to come and attend and speak.
So relative to her question, though, do you think that's best done as a special meeting just for that? Or that we do that in the course of a regular meeting?
I think we could do that in the course of a regular meeting. We have guest speakers that come and speak to us all the time for the sheriff's department, right? Maybe we have a guest speaker from the community, to make us smart from that perspective.
If it's successful, like you were talking about adding maybe 4 or 5 additional speakers, those taking some time, even if we extended it from 2 minutes to, let's say, 5 minutes, it would be nice to maybe have a pretty thin schedule if we combine our meeting so that it's, approval of minutes and this and that, and then just see if there's any, old business we need to take care of, but just thin it out so that the main focus is on the speakers, because I do like the idea of doing something like that, or organizations like the Homeless Coalition and different organizations. The ones that we are part of would be really great to have speakers that have those concerns, and the further off we make those, the more we can be inclusive of that.
Because we have a tendency, at least I haven't been on the board very long, but we have a tendency to react. We see something in the news and we move towards that issue. I think that part of what we should be thinking about is being a little bit more proactive. And we see something being stood up, an effort, these drones, right? This whole drone effort, those kind of things, maybe have a meeting related upon that. There are businesses in this town and in the county that build drones for the military, build drones for other law enforcement agencies. We just gotta, I'd love to think that we build it and people come, right? Sometimes you gotta be evangelical about these things that we're passionate about.
Even though the school subject was reacting to Uvalde,
Yeah.
it was kind of proactive
Yeah.
for us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And so, I think we have been to some degree. I don't know that it always excites the public when we're proactive, though. It excites us, but
I think things like small businessmen, I've been robbed 5 times the last month. I want to talk about that issue, in terms of community outreach and public outreach.
And it kind of begs the question, how come they're not coming to us in our current configuration?
I don't know. I would,
like the sheriff said,
unless I was on
crime's not going down.
unless I was on the board, I wouldn't know when these meetings are.
Yeah. I think it's when, how often, it's like watching
So we got-
public TV.
Mhm.
How often do we do that until we
Every
find
night.
it? Yeah, but you know, some people do.
I like
you know?
C-SPAN 3.
Yeah,
I like the rules.
but
down
I
in the
think
Senate,
it's a
but-
matter of, that's why I thought 2 to 3 months out, we can really start advertising or flyering or doing all sorts of different things to the community, inviting people to
Yeah.
come to those and asking them feedback. Gives us that opportunity to really see those pieces. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well, I
So
think that's good. I think if
okay.
you'll hit that up and
Yeah,
and look at
Jeanette
that.
and I will work together
And then, you know, we had targeted the library, and the library board is both city, county, and they ought to be a little more accommodating to us. How is it that UNM?
yeah, it's run by the city
goes
and it's,
in the Jewell community room without us being there? That's the question.
It's run by
I
the
thought we had
city.
it's
connections,
the
man.
Jewel Community Room and you couldn't even get it?
Isn't that, you know, that just shows you how much clout I have. I couldn't even get in.
That's what I said. I said his name and they said, who?
Who?
Oh,
Something.
man, that's harsh.
I'm
Did you have
just
something?
wondering if we've created a subcommittee of Elena and David to.
Sure.
I-
I'm willing to do that.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I do. So you and I will talk about getting how we would do that, and then we can all get together and decide how we
Well,
want
again, how
to.
you target these people
Mhm.
and get them here.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And I would consult with Stefan about that,
Mhm.
because he, there's few issues where we've had
Oh, he's not Floyd
a
anymore.
lot of public.
I would say both Esteban and Flood.
Yeah.
Get them in here.
Right,
Devin.
Have been things that he has publicized,
right.
so.
You
That
get
would be
2
great.
people.
Yeah.
I don't know about this Esteban guy, but I sure like Floyd.
Mhm.
He's not here to defend himself.
Yeah, that'd be great. And anybody else out there that would like to be part of it,
I can get the schedules for Parks and Rec. so-
fantastic. That'd be great.
All right, so
Start working
is
on
there
that.
anything else in the, in line with subcommittee reports or topic-specific stuff that would be in that item 6A?
I don't think so.
For me, it was just the body cam stuff that, the sheriff touched on. And the sheriff's office representative last time also briefly touched on. But there is still a lot of issues that surround intimate partner violence, child sexual abuse and sexual violence and body cams that are disconcerting. And so we just want to try to continue that conversation about how we go about doing that and still maintaining victim confidentiality and those components. So yeah, I think it'll be an ongoing discussion on how we go about doing that.
Okay. Well, let me then go to item 7A, a discussion about SOARB code of conduct. I have been increasingly uneasy as we talk about potential hires and the like. And so I asked Daniel to prepare something for us specifically. I know Daniel's on, and I believe you all received an email from him. I think it just came out today, so I don't know if anybody
Oh.
really had a chance to look at that, but let me turn it over to him first with that framing to kind of tell us what he's found. Daniel,
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
could be a little louder, but we can hear you.
Okay. So I provided the code of conduct at the request of Chairman Jewell, as well as the ordinance that created this SOAR board.
We're having difficulty hearing Daniel.
Okay, hold on, let me try and not use my. What about now?
Better.
Okay, that's what it was, probably my headset. The code of, the question was related to the
Revised agenda that was sent out.
the reason
You
for
look at the draft.
the board.
I
And
think we missed some of that.
the question was related as to whether the board's duties and what are the limits and the scope of those duties. And the reason I provided the ordinance is because it's pretty clear as to what is expected of the SOARB board. When it was created as an advisory board to review the policies of the sheriff's office, the practices of the sheriff's office, procedures, and the SOARB board has traditionally done a great job doing that, as well as being a conduit for the community to communicate with members of Bernalillo County or the board about the sheriff's office, which you have done great in great fashion, in addition to providing the yearly reports, which are updated quite frequently. I wanted to inform you, and this came up during the last electoral season, the code of conduct for Bernalillo County does actually apply to volunteers of the county. So it applies to every member of the SOAR board. So that would mean, you know, for the purposes of political activity, I did advise back then as to what the limits were of that political activity, the need for members to disclose if you had any kind of personal connection. And right now, one of the main questions were sometimes there's a question as to whether there's personal ties to anyone in that community or as far as hiring someone. Sorry. And there's not necessarily a code of conduct prohibiting someone from, you know, recommending the hire of someone, but that can be construed as a conflict of interest based on that personal relationship. The code of conduct specifically prohibits a volunteer from encouraging or influencing the hiring of someone or some company that may have a financial benefit to that person. I have not specifically seen that here with the SOARB board, but it was requested of me to kind of give everyone a primer of that and to just reiterate that the board has done a great job doing what it's supposed to do. And some of, like, for example, this today, some of the hot topics were the political nature of that stop. The upgrades the sheriff is making to his technology, those are all well within the scope. I really haven't seen many issues of specific people, you know, anyone trying to influence the hiring of anyone, but these are just things for the members to think about, and just to have a copy of the code of conduct so that you are aware about it. And you may have seen the news about this. Because the code of conduct does apply to public, the county commissioners, as well as the volunteer appointees, which you all are. There's not necessarily a nexus, but there is the code of conduct board does exist. They have been in the news kind of frequently over the past 6 weeks, and I just wanted to alert, you know, it's kind of all connected there. But I'm also here to help you guys never have it. I'm also here to make sure that you guys never have to appear before that. Quite frankly, I appreciate that you guys always ask me for advice as to whether you should do something, meet somewhere, and you guys have always done a great job with that. And if you have any more questions, I'm more than willing to answer.
Okay, so now if someone had been a member of the board and was in consideration for a position, what's the line? I mean, that doesn't appear to be a personal relationship, Daniel, but is there a line that you see with respect to us taking a position on a hiring circumstance where a past board member is up for consideration?
That needs to be disclosed to the board pursuant to the code of conduct. And the conflict would arise if that person had a financial interest with any one of you, that you would be receiving some kind of financial interest. Financial interests are the things that are specifically stated in the code of conduct. So
Okay.
that should be disclosed. It doesn't sound like that's the case. Friendships seem to be fine, but it's where the financial relationship starts, where it becomes an issue.
What's the impetus for all this? What's driving all this? Is there a former board member that's up for a position?
She may have indeed been hired by now. I don't know.
Yes, there is one.
Oh, okay.
I think I've heard there's still a few.
And we're not using any names, so
No.
we'll steer clear of that.
Okay.
And just so that there's a level of comfort in discussing things like that, I asked Daniel to do this.
I had no idea.
So this is one of those prospective things that we're discussing before the train wreck. Hopefully.
Very gate.
All right. So thank you, Daniel, for your work on that. Further comments or questions? Debbie?
Yeah, Daniel, I just have a question. I found out just coincidentally, my husband is doing volunteer work for one of our state representatives. And in the course of that, he's working on a project with a team of volunteers, none of whom are paid, to research requests for grant money that I guess every legislator gets a certain amount of discretionary funds that they can give to whatever cause they want. So one of the ones that my husband was asked to look into was a request for a grant from coming from the sheriff's office to fund or partially fund the purchase of a new helicopter. And I would think my husband was not asked to evaluate it. He was just asked to speak to the BCSO deputy who was in charge of that project and find out the details of the request. There's a possibility that at some future time, he might be asked to actually evaluate that request. Now, I would think, I don't have any kind of financial interest in any of this, but it would seem to me that ethically, I should not take part in any discussions involving this board or any votes that might involve the helicopter issue for BCSO. Do you have any comments on that?
I see the connection you're making, and I appreciate the disclosure. I will do a little more research. So it seems to me that he's kind of like a lobbyist in a sense, already being paid by the state. And
No,
the sheriff,
he's not. The legislators, this is Meredith Dixon. So Representative Dixon and other legislators do the same thing. They have a team of volunteers who get paid nothing, but who have some financial background so they can possibly evaluate these, they get multiple requests for disbursement of these discretionary funds. Mm-hmm. So my husband having a background in finance is one of a team of people that Representative Dixon has called on in the past to evaluate. And at this point, all he has done is he called the representative at the sheriff's office. I think it was under Sheriff Jaramillo, who was in charge of this funding request. And he just found out what the request was and what the reason for the request. And he recorded all that and sent it in to Representative Dixon. But that's, at this point, that's the extent of what he's done. I don't think it triggers any of the prohibitions in any of these acts, but I would still like to think that anyone in the position that I'm in right now would feel an obligation to disqualify themselves or recuse from any considerations in the helicopter issue.
And Daniel, you can certainly answer that, but let me, you're saying disqualification. If I'm understanding Daniel, it starts with disclosure, disclosure. And it seems what I'm hearing is that's kind of the antiseptic, that's kind of the cleanser. I mean, we're only in a position to make advisory decisions. We're not making the decisions themselves. So I don't know why you would feel the need to disqualify. Yeah, to abstain from voting on something like that. If you think it's good for the sheriff's department, regardless of it having been, vetted by your husband. And Daniel, again, you can answer this. Why would there be the need not to vote on it?
My response would just be that there could be a perception of impropriety more than any actual impropriety, but I would not want to.
So you just recuse yourself.
Right. I wouldn't want to jeopardize the reputation of this board, for example, by being involved at that, even though I'm not, directly involved with my husband's project, he's my husband. So.
Did you have something there, Daniel?
and I tend to agree that in your situation, it seems so disconnected that you're not necessarily receiving a financial interest, so the code of conduct doesn't necessarily apply to your situation. But I also see the argument of the image of impropriety. I think it's a high standard that exists a lot in the legal field for a reason, but I'm not sure it necessarily applies to all of you. If you give me some time, though, I would like to discuss the idea or the topic with some other colleagues in my department in legal, and then give you something in writing if you don't mind. I don't think right now that you need to recuse yourself from voting. I mean, that is your right, but I don't think so at this moment. And I can give you a further, more researched answer on that specific situation. It just seems so far disconnected from what was originally contemplated.
Elena, you had something?
Well, I think for me, I have been involved for years and years and years with, kind of the crime component in the city of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, in the state of New Mexico. And so one of the reasons I think I was asked to be part of this board is because of that kind of background that I have. And so, like, way before with Sheriff White, Sheriff Gonzalez, and now Sheriff Allen, talking about things like body cams and, what to do. That is something that I have done for years as someone who is involved in victim advocacy. And so I've had meetings with, Desiree and the sheriff about body cams, about advocacy, about those kinds of things, way before and like during the election period, after the election period. But I, on an ongoing basis, am going to be involved with the sheriff's office about different things as far as victim advocacy goes. So, and that was something that I disclosed at the very beginning when I became part of this. So just,
And
reminding everybody that that's something that I do.
I think as long as your husband doesn't own a helicopter dealership.
Yeah.
Then I think we're good.
You're pretty
Exactly.
good.
Yeah.
Or you a body cam company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean,
exactly.
again, it seems to me if you're struggling with it personally,
Shoot him an email.
Yeah.
shoot him an email, but disclosure, just much in the manner that you just did, and maybe we can convince you otherwise, maybe not, as Daniel's saying, if you think it presents the appearance of impropriety, that's kind of your personal standard. And you say, nah, I shouldn't be voting on that. But
Daniel has his hand up.
oh, Daniel, yes.
And I agree with the chairman. And member Giacci is correct. I believe a lot of the members on the board were selected because of the ties and the experience they have. So I don't believe that the code of conduct was, created to prohibit you from doing the good work you're doing on, individually. That's part of the reason you all were selected as members of the board. So work on domestic violence, work on improving just the sheriff's office or that communication that you've all done traditionally. It's not the intent to limit that. It's just financial. And that's because we've had situations, you've heard these situations where there's back dealings for somebody to get a contract to get a construction deal, and not what we're seeing here. That's really what was contemplated, and based on what described today, I don't see that.
Yeah, and it certainly goes beyond the situation that I envisioned, where we're saying, Sheriff Allen, that Joe, he's a great old guy. You really need him on your staff, and putting ourselves in a position where we're using the fact that we're on this board to influence a higher decision.
A powerful sword.
You'd be amazed at the perception of it. As I'm on TV about some of this stuff, I saw you on TV the other night, so the perception of power is not the reality usually, but there is that perception. So I just think we need to be circumspect about that and make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a position where there is the appearance that we're inappropriately using the power that, or lack thereof, that's derived.
We're like mall cops, observe and report. Observe and report.
So I think we've probably beat that enough Daniel, I would certainly invite anything that you would care to write, but don't feel compelled to give us a treatise.
No, I thank you. No, I think it's useful to once in a while just reiterate the purpose of the board and things like this. And for
Okay.
those that may not know, Mr. Wismer also created a policy for a code of conduct for the board. I'll forward that to all the members as
Oh,
well,
cool.
as far as how the meetings are conducted.
It always occurs to me that Mr. Wismer is who initially provided some of our basic rules. So, Michael, I don't know if you had anything to offer on the subject, but we'll certainly hear from you if you do.
No, I just was listening to everyone's comments, and it just strikes me that everyone is really aware of the fact that if there is a potential conflict of interest, they want to identify it and disclose it, and that's heartwarming to me. As for our personal code of conduct that we made for the board, my thought in making that was, if this is how we operate and we're satisfied with how we operate under these rules, then let's just codify it. And that's where I think we were when we codified them. I don't see the need to make any changes based on what Daniel has said. So thank you for the time to speak, Mr. Chair.
Sure. So if there's nothing further on that,
I have one.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Jeanette?
Just, it's come to my attention again about the emails have been coming up for members of the board. So, again, coming from out of the 10th floor down through commissioners and everybody, that's when the commissioners did ask if you guys could have an email, and what was said from that was there at this time, no board members, volunteers, or anything within the county will be given emails. This came from IT.
And when you say emails, you're talking about having a county.
County
Email
emails.
list.
So they're not going to be issuing any kind of emails to any volunteers or
want that.
anybody. It has to do with security and cyberspace and everything else going on. So at this time, no.
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna continue to push that issue because there are all these expectations of all of us on how we're supposed to behave,
Mhm.
codes of conduct and all this other stuff. But yet we're all using our personal email account.
Right.
So that if somebody comes for Texas open records request, I forget what it's called here, then they're gonna get into my emails and.
So the suggestion is what
That's a really good
Mr.
point.
Do separate-
Lopez did.
Set up a
He made
separate
his
Gmail.
own Gmail account, and it says, is it Joseph?
It's my
A.
name
Lopez
followed by
Flor?
SOARB.
And then at Gmail.
Just so there's.
Yeah, but we're having to.
It's a free account,
No,
so yeah.
I know all that.
But
But
that's how
again,
they're doing it.
I'm just telling the chair, I want to keep poking whenever I talk to my commissioner.
Mhm.
I ask him again that I believe that.
Well, it was
So we're gonna
Commissioner
figure it out.
Benson that did ask the question. and
Yes.
He got the answer that no, and
Right.
so, they're not gonna do it, and that comes from IT. So
And I'm sure other boards don't have it either.
Nope. nobody's,
They
no
are
volunteers at
No
all.
volunteer period.
So I
That's what I'm
mean,
hearing.
even if you push it with the commissioner.
So does that mean as
under the code of
volunteers,
conduct,
so are we
commissioners
subject,
Can't overstep
Mhm.
overall administration.
I'm clear on that.
are we subject
I
to
know how it
the,
works.
are we subject to the Public Disclosure Act?
I don't know, that's a good question for
Yeah.
Mr. Daniel, who has his hand up.
Yeah, Daniel, go ahead.
And I think this is, I apologize. I didn't really understand this issue last month, I want to say, but, or didn't pay too close attention, but you are subject to IPRA as volunteers for the county while you work county stuff. So, and I forgot, I heard the member right now talk about the Texas Open Meeting Act. It's gonna be specific to anything related to it, but I don't see why you wouldn't be subject to disclosure. For example, if today in the morning, I emailed you all the code of conduct as well as the ordinance, that email is subject to IPRA with all of your email address on there. So let me ask as well and try and get another push, because IPRA's a very strong law in New Mexico. And I understand and appreciate the desire to want to protect yourselves by at least getting you an email address. I also understand why IT is very strict on this. We had the January data breach last year, and it was a mess for 6 weeks. So I understand why they're scared of it. Let me bring it up. I think my boss headed it to another meeting, but I think this, I kind of agree that this is not a topic that should just, let die. I think it's worth bringing up.
Okay, thank you, Debbie.
I'm just wondering if we're subject, oh, sorry.
It's okay.
If we're subject to IPRA, do we have an obligation to save every email? Like, I save a lot of it, but if I'm just writing to
Yeah.
someone and get a response back that says, yes, I don't necessarily save.
No.
Yeah, and I'm not clear, Daniel, are you suggesting that by being volunteers, we invite a fishing expedition through our entire email, base?
No.
Okay,
Just the,
just
So
the
it comes
emails
through our
that might,
department. Yes, and we'll fight, and I'm gonna tell you right now, we will fight, when we do things like that. The best example I could give is that there was an employee once who was in a situation where they were at work and they used their personal cell phone to record something while they were at work with a constituent. That constituent requested that recording on that person's personal phone. County legal requested that specific video. So we're not gonna ask for your phone. We're not gonna ask for your personal property. We're gonna be very narrow and say, hey, can you forward me the emails, these emails specifically? None
so
of
the
this.
specific communications.
Yes, because
get that.
there is that connection, right? Like that is your personal property.
Get off.
And our county
Come get it.
appreciates that and doesn't want to interfere with it.
that's why.
So do we have an obligation to preserve every SOARB related
No.
email that we get?
I delete all
No,
those
just
Nah,
for
it's on the
that
server.
reason. Yeah.
because
It's on the county
Okay.
server already.
If it's mailed into the county, that's where it's accessible.
Mhm.
anything that I'm involved in or Danette's involved in, it's saved for about a year or two automatically.
Anything we say to Danette.
It's
Right, but
She-
if I email Elena or anybody on this board, does that need to be preserved? Like, how are you doing on such and such?
No,
issue?
it doesn't.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
No. But what happened is, I don't know, let's say one of the members retires and the member knows an email exists. And so they say, we want the email between the chair and vice chair in 2022 that happened on January 15th, 2022. We would ask those members, if they're still members, hey, do you have a copy of those emails? We'll just send them an email. It's just going to be a courtesy email. You either have it or you don't.
Okay.
Reasonable, because of, how do you say this? Storing data is very expensive. So IPRA understands that data storage isn't unlimited. The courts have realized this. So we just need a reasonable time frame to store. It's usually 1 to 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim, did you have something else?
I'll just let it go.
You sure?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I appreciate you bringing that, Jim. And
Yeah. I
I
don't know that we
support
looked
you.
at that context of it.
Mhm.
That's
yeah,
very
no, it's,
important. Now, that's inspection of public records. I don't know that is the equivalent of this public disclosure. So what I'm hearing from legal counsel is, there's not this obligation out there to go through and see that whatever you have that might pertain, the request for inspection is going to come in through the county. And legal may be reaching out to saying, hey, do you have that video? Do you have that email? But otherwise, I don't think we're subject to IPRA. Is that a correct interpretation, Daniel?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we know just enough to get ourselves in trouble.
Yep.
Okay. So we had the sheriff address the item 7B, the deputy's conversation with Mr. Peña, the accomplice of Mr. Peña, pardon me. If that's even been, I assume that has been borne out, that he's accomplice. At any rate, anything else before we adjourn? I think tentatively we've scheduled the next meeting for April 14, same place, same time.
Judge, I just have one thing. I met with Commissioner Benson on the.
That's right. There are two things. I'm glad you said that.
On the 21st of February, and we talked about my perceptions as a sheriff, Miss Major Anderson that was here. He talked about the annual report. He was very keen on that. And although I couldn't be there at the commissioners meeting, he expressed solidarity with us for the work that we had done. We talked about body worn cameras. I talked to him about email addresses. I don't know if y'all knew that or not. And we also talked about buying a helicopter. And so to caveat this, you know, this is Jim Stewart, retired chief deputy sheriff, talking to my commissioner. So I'm not talking as a member of the board per se. So that's, Judge, that summarizes what we discussed.
Judge,
Yes.
Except for the email.
did everybody get the email about the commission meeting on the 14th?
Yes.
Okay.
And my understanding, having talked to Daniel, is there's not an expectation that we be there, but we're invited. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, they are
going
gonna
to-
discuss it, or he's gonna
Yeah.
have questions and. So it
So
sounds like we
be
should.
there.
Some, well, I think, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We should at least have some members there
Yeah.
because they are gonna.
Oh, you're
discuss
quitting that.
Because you're the liaison to our,
To the vice chair, really?
no,
To the commission.
to the commissioner, our commissioner.
So,
But it wasn't it Jim and I? Notice how I like
who's,
to share that.
Yes,
but-
you and
Yeah.
Jim. Well,
Yeah.
Jim has liaised with his commissioner.
Yeah,
This is specifically on our recommendations
Yeah.
to the commission.
Yes.
So
the
I
one that he
think it
brought, the
behooves us-
summary that he was looking at.
It behooves us to be
So
there. So
Commissioner,
I can go. I'll leave us.
Olivas
us.
asked for time.
Right,
So it's on the agenda and it's his time to ask questions and then anybody else can ask questions.
I have another board meeting that night, so.
So
just give her
Debbie
more.
Dodge got, I mean, not Debbie Dodge, Debbie Strongin got
Right.
what she wanted, which was them to ask questions about the.
At least as he said, he read the
Yes,
summary.
so.
So
Judge, I
Do
do
you-
plan on being there.
you do
Okay.
plan on.
I'm not representing as a member of the SOARB. They try to turn it around on me.
So what they'll do is
Right.
probably just go through the report and if there's specific questions that they have that for your recommendations or whatever else, they're just gonna ask what's on that report.
last month,
It's hard to
You
say,
can
because
go.
they could ask how it occurred, they could ask, are you guys following up on this? Do you want us to follow up on this? Or, you know, it seems, you know, I don't know,
It's a Tuesday.
I
They
just don't
can
want to,
ask-
I don't want to get in trouble with two eminence.
with the,
With me?
with
Yeah.
the judge.
Oh, no.
Yes, 48.
Wow.
Nice.
Well, vice chair's gonna be there, so if he's not
Oh,
there, she's
wow.
the chair.
Yeah,
He'll be there.
I'll accept that interpretation. It's her eminence. I'll try to make it if I can. I don't know that's next Tuesday, huh?
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Tuesday at
At
5.
5, right?
Yeah.
I can make
You
it,
can make it.
but I really would like you to be there.
So we'll have 3 folks there,
Okay.
Yeah. that'd be great.
potentially 4.
Are you gonna be there?
And so,
No, I'm just asking if you, is there anything you want us to ask them from your perspective?
Pay
The
raise.
way I
Pay raise, full
understood
vacation.
is that they're gonna just, you know, he's gonna have, want to talk about the report and
Mhm.
the recommendations you made and so.
and that's in your district? Where's
It's
Olivas?
Elena's and mine and
Oh, okay.
Diane Layden.
He's the new guy.
Yes.
He's the new guy.
He had been on the police oversight.
Yes,
Right.
And
okay.
quit.
Oh, okay,
Resigned.
all
He
right,
resigned.
got it.
but yes. So.
All right. Anything else I've neglected? And I thank you, Will. I think Debbie and I are appreciative to get
Yeah, we
it
gotta get
before
it.
3, so
We're not going.
I'll go ahead and call for that motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second,
Second.
any unreadiness? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
We won't even listen for the
Now you can
nays.
go look at-
Thank you.
That's dangerous. I hope the